Today on the Caucus, as party leaders work towards a debt deal, Liberman and Nate Silver discuss rank-and-file members of Congress and how their reception to any compromise could be chilly. Also, Michael Shear reports on a new breed of video tracker on the 2012 campaign trail.
So Nate, a lot of political observers, not just Democrats, but also some conservatives like our colleague David Brooks, have noted a seeming intransigence among congressional Republicans in these debt negotiations. And they've noted that, in fact, Republicans have compromised in the past. Ronald Reagan raised taxes a number of times. You've pointed out that there's some quantifiable electoral reasons why they might be less willing to compromise than they have been in the past.
Sure. I looked at exit poll data and what share of the voters for each party in Congress were of different ideologies. And what we found is that 2/3 of people who voted for Republicans for Congress last year were conservative. So despite their winning a sweeping majority, their support really comes disproportionately from one ideological group. That hasn't been so true in the past. In 2000, for example, just 10 years ago, support for Republican candidates was split about evenly between conservative and moderate voters. So they really have kind of a mandate, I call it, from conservatives. It was the turnout that really helped to get them elected in a lot of these marginal districts, and that's who they're kind of accountable to.
Right, and turnout's a lot about enthusiasm, and you note that there's an enthusiasm gap not just between Republicans and Democrats, but among Republicans, between conservative Republicans and more liberal Republicans.
Yeah, if you really break down the data on who voted and who didn't, at least what we can infer from polls, right, it's always a guess. But the split was really between moderate Republicans and kind of conservative or Tea Party Republicans as much as it was between Republicans and Democrats.
Right, so it's conservatives and then everybody else, basically, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's also true that a lot of this congressional Republican caucus are new members. So maybe some of them are just less willing to compromise because they just haven't accepted that that's part of governing yet. But also a lot of them won by really narrow margins, and they're afraid of losing some of those conservatives, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were several dozen seats that were within a few points, and so if there had been even a small shift in turnout, if it had been more like it had been in 2006, then the GOP would only have gained perhaps 30 or 35 seats instead of 63. But you're going to have some people who are weeded out for being ineffective or for not having the patience to deal with something like a negotiation that is going to be very frustrating. That's the thing about Boehner too is, he wasn't the one that they brought to power. Right? He really could be at some risk. I mean, even though I think ironically he could score a huge policy win for the GOP, it might not be good for him politically.
We should also note that there was a really bad jobs report that came out today. And there's been a lot of talk this year about the fact that no one has been reelected president since FDR with an unemployment rate above 7.2. It's now 9.2. But you've written that, in fact, unemployment is not the greatest electoral economic indicator.
Yeah, historically, I mean, even that 7.2 number, I think that was Reagan, but Reagan won by, I think, 18 points.
Yeah, it was a big
over
one.
Mondale, suggesting he had some extra wiggle room. There's not a magic number. The evidence suggests that historically things like GDP and inflation are probably a bit more important, like disposable income. Although I will say in the report this morning, every number was bad, where it wasn't just you had, slower job growth. You also had a decline in wages, which hasn't happened in a long time. People leaving the workforce entirely. So there were hints of kind of broader problems.
It's an honor to be here on Independence Day, the day we celebrate our nation's birth, greatest nation in the history of the earth.
This is Michael Shear reporting. At Republican campaign stops in New Hampshire, one of the regulars in the crowd is Aaron Fielding. He's in front in the black hat. He's a tracker, someone from a competing political party or campaign who records nearly everything a candidate says in public. Trackers are nothing new to politics, but this time Democrats are trying a bit of a different approach. Mr. Fielding is part of a new Democratic group called American Bridge 21st Century, which is part of a massive push by Democrats to ramp up their opposition research. They have quietly hired a dozen professional trackers, like Mr. Fielding, and are creating a detailed archive of the hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage they're gathering. The goal is to catch a candidate in a flip-flop or worse. Perhaps the most famous tracker moment involved Virginia Senator George Allen, who singled out a tracker of Indian descent.
So welcome, let's give a welcome to Macaca here. Welcome to America and the real world of Virginia.
On the Republican side, there is no direct analog to American Bridge, but strategists say they're not worried, noting that on the campaign trail, almost everyone has a cell phone camera. Democrats are sticking with the approach, banking that what they're gathering will someday come in handy. If they need footage of Mitt Romney and John Huntsman shaking hands, they've got it. And who knows, they might need footage of Mitt Romney talking to a young parade goer about snow cones. They've got that too.
Is it pretty good? Can I have some? That's a real Republican right there. She knows what is hers and what is not hers.